long time ago in Ireland, there was a man named, of all things, Paddy. And Paddy lived in a part of Ireland where the people loved music and they loved dancing. And Paddy had somehow gotten himself a set of Irish bagpipes. And he learned to play one tune. And it was a tune called The Black Rogue. Now, The Black Rogue is a very popular tune, and it's a great tune for dancing. And it sounds something like this. But Paddy wasn't much for practicing, and once he'd gotten the rudiments of the tune together, he played it, but he played it a little bit differently. It was sort of sounded more like this. Well, you get the idea. You will notice, however, that it was rhythmic, for all that it lacked in melody or style or grace. Now, I said that the people in that part of the country were crazy. They were mad for dancing and music. And so they loved to invite musicians along to any kind of party or crossroad dance or wedding or christening. But there was a problem, and that was that the only musician in that part of Ireland was Paddy. So they'd invite him along, because any musician is better than singing yourself to be able to dance. Well, they'd invite Paddy along, but they knew the limitations of his repertoire, and they'd tease him a little bit. They'd say, "Paddy, could you play The Box of Oranmore?" And he'd say, "Oh, I don't have that one." They'd say, well, Paddy, could you play the Kesh Jig?" He'd say, "Oh, no, I haven't that one either." "Well, Paddy, could you play, would you play the Lasses of Limerick?" He'd say, "Oh, I couldn't." And finally they'd say, "Well, Paddy, what can you play?" He'd say, "I can play the Black Rogue." And they'd say, "We hate that one." And his face would downturn. But they'd say, "Oh, no, Paddy, give it to us anyway." And he would play away for all he was worth. And they would laugh and dance all night long. Well, one night, Paddy was on his way home from one of these occasions. And he had had so much fun, and it had been so wild and so full of life that he found himself exhausted beyond belief, and he couldn't even make it all the way home, and he had to lay down in the ditch and take a nap before he could get all the way home. And he fell asleep, and he was snoring away in the ditch when he felt something wet on his face. Well, he opened one eye, and there was the snout of an animal right there in his face. Well, Paddy went from horizontal to vertical in one move. And he looked. Now the night, which had been clear, had suddenly gone all misty, and he couldn't quite make out what kind of a creature it was. And it looked, at first it looked like a pig. And he looked down at it, and he tried to get to one side to see if he could see the silhouette. Maybe he could identify it. But the creature turned to face him. And now it was misty again, and he tried to get to the other side to see. Now it looked more like maybe it was a goat, or now maybe a pony. He wasn't sure. And then he moved again to the other side, and now the creature was looking. Now it looked more like a cow, and a good-sized one at that. And he got to the other. Now it was more the size of a horse. And finally he said to the creature, he said, "Will you hold still so I can see what manner of being you are?" And the creature spoke to him. And the creature said, "Paddy, don't you know me?" And Paddy said, I don't believe I've had the pleasure." And the creature said again, "Paddy, what night is it?" And he said, "Well, let's see, it's the, he realized that it was the wee morning hours of the 1st of November. And he began to get a little frightened, because the 1st of November was the day in the Irish calendar when the veil between this world and the next world was a little bit thinner, and creatures were known to pass through and go about. And one of those creatures was the Pooka of November, which was a creature it was reputed to be able to change shapes. And as Paddy was thinking it, the creature looked at him and said, "That's right, Paddy. I'm the Pooka of November." And Paddy stuck back and he said, "What do you want with me?" Paddy was thinking he had heard that the creature sometimes took people away and didn't bring them back. And he said, What do you want with me?" And the Pooka said, "Paddy, I have need of the greatest piper in all of Ireland." Paddy said, "Yes, but what do you want with me?" And the creature said, "Be easy with yourself, Paddy. Will you come with me?" And Paddy said, "Where do you want to take me?" And the creature said, "I have need of a piper for an event which is occurring on the slopes of Croagh Patrick." Now, Croagh Patrick was a famous sacred hill in that part of Ireland, and oftentimes, if you had done something bad and you confessed it to the priest, they would tell you to make a pilgrimage to Croagh Patrick. And Paddy said, "Oh, Croagh Patrick, the priest told me I had to make a pilgrimage to Croagh Patrick." And the Pooka said, "You confessed something to the priest. What did you confess to him?" And Paddy said, "Well, we stole the priest's goose and we ate it for supper." The Pooka said, "And you confessed that to the priest?" "Well, not exactly, but we did invite him to supper." So the Pooka said, "Oh, then you'll go along with me." And Paddy said, "I think maybe I will." And the Pooka said, "Good then, Paddy, get up on my back there, and don't forget to bring your pipes." So Paddy put his pipes in the bag, and he got up on the back of the Pooka, and the Pooka took off at such a great rate of speed as was not seen in Ireland again until the invention, many years later, of the BMW motorcycle. And they skimmed along the treetops, and they didn't stop. The tears were going out of Paddy's eyes, his hair was flying back, and they didn't stop until they hit the slopes of Croagh Patrick, and I do mean hit the slopes of Croagh Patrick. Bang! And Paddy was thrown off the Pooka's back, and he came to just in time to see the Pooka disappearing into a little cavern on the side of the mountain. And Paddy picked up his pipes and followed the Pooka into the cavern. And inside was a party going on, the like of which Paddy had never seen before. There were more than 100 wild-eyed, white-haired women, and they were boogieing down. And the torchlight on the side of the cavern was glinting, and it was a wild scene altogether. And Pooka said to Paddy, "Paddy, would you like a drink before you give us some music?" And Paddy said, "I think I would." And the Pooka made a motion, and a little door in the side of the cavern opened up, and out came a goose, a little goose with its little wings like this, balanced out front, and there was a little tray on the goose's wings, and it walked forward, and Paddy reached for the cup that was on the tray, and he recognized the goose. He said, that is the goose. That's the goose that..." And the Pooka said, "Paddy, never mind that. Remember where you are. Now please drink your little beverage and give us some music." And Paddy, he drank his little beverage, and he buckled on the pipes, and the goose disappeared, and Paddy buckled on the pipes, and he hoped that they would like the Black Rogue, and he hoped that he could do that. But when he started to play, the Black Rogue was not what came out. Every jig, every reel, every hornpipe, every piece of music that had ever occurred in the whole long history of Ireland came gushing out of Paddy's pipes. It was the most amazing experience Paddy had ever had. He had only to think of a tune and it would come out perfectly. And the women were dancing and dancing, and the music was splashing over everyone. And it was a wild and wonderful scene. And when Paddy had played all the music that ever had been in Ireland, he had no choice but to go on, and he began playing Beethoven and Bach, and he played all manner of classical music, and then he went on to play pop music, and it went on into the future, the far future. He played U2, he played the Beastie Boys, he played hop, he played every type of music that had ever been played and could ever be played, came gushing out of the pipes without the slightest effort on his part. Well, Paddy, he just played and played. It was such an exciting experience. But finally there was the sound in the distance of a rooster crowing the dawn. And the Pooka came up and said, Paddy, it's time now. I have to get you back before the sun is fully up in the sky, or I'll never, ever be able to return you to your world. And Paddy did not want to stop. He did not want to stop playing. But finally a little thought was buzzing around in his head, and he thought of his old mother on the farm doing all the work by herself with no one to supervise her. And so finally he stopped playing, and the Pooka said, excellent choice, Paddy, but now never let it be said that we here in the other world don't pay the piper. And he went around with a red sack, and each one of those women reached into her apron and drew out a handful of gold coins and threw them into the sack until it was bulging almost as much as the Paddy's eyes were bulging in as he watched this spectacle. And then Pooka said, that's not all, Paddy. Look behind door number 2. And he looked over, and the little goose came out. That same little goose came out with a set of pipes that was made of sterling silver. Paddy said, for me. Yes, said the Pooka. And Paddy took the pipes and put them in the bag with his own pipes, and with a tear in his eye, he waved goodbye to all those women, and he got on the Pooka's back, and they shot out of that cavern at that same great rate of speed as was not seen again for many, many, many years in Ireland. And they shot over the treetops, and they stopped at the exact spot where they had met the night before, and the Pooka stopped about 10 feet before Paddy, and he went flying over the Pooka's head, and he hit the ground and was unconscious. And he did not come to until the sun was up in the sky. And when he did, he had such a headache. Oh! But he said to himself, a headache like this is a small price to pay for a dream like that. A dream like that would sustain a man for the rest of his life, a musician of my caliber. And he thought it a great gift. And he stood up, and he reached down, and he picked up his pipes bag, but it was heavier than he remembered. And he opened the bag, and inside was not just one set of pipes, but 2 sets of pipes. The silver pipes were in there. Well, he leapt up like a crazy man. He started screaming. He went running down the road calling for all the neighbors. The neighbors, they came in. And he told them this same story that I have been telling you now, lo these minutes. And one of them said, well, Paddy, what about this gold? And Paddy reached into his sack and pulled out that red sack. And he said, here's the gold. And each of the neighbors took the sack and looked into it. The next one, Paddy finally noticed, and he said, why are you laughing at my gold? And one of them said, well, no, Paddy, perhaps we could count your gold out for you. Paddy said, yes, you could. That'd be a lovely thing. And so Paddy one of the neighbor took the bag, and he dumped out the gold, and out came a shower of golden autumn leaves. Everybody was snorting, but Paddy said, wait now, but I have my silver pipes. Now listen to this, what comes out of these bagpipes. And he began squeezing the pipes, and this is what came out. He tried to play the Black Rogue. But all that came out was the voice of the dead goose. One by one, the neighbors left, shaking their heads sadly, and his own mother was the last one out with a little trace of a tear in her eye. And Paddy, he was so sad. You can only be that sad when you've started being very, very happy. And he finally remembered, wait, I have my own pipes, and I can play them. And he pulled out his pipes. And he tried to play the Black Rogue, but that is not what came out. And ever after that, Paddy was known as the King of the Pipers. And he lived a long musical